Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DiFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by La Marzocco, who has been making espresso machines by hand in Florence since 1927. That is almost 100 years of building what I believe is one of the world's best espresso machines, most reliable and innovative. All of this based on the kind of feedback they get from the people they love to serve, coffee shop professionals just like yourselves. And that's why La Marzocco is such a household name in coffee and is at the heart of so many of the world's best coffee shops. When you think of innovation, you think of machines like the KB90 espresso machine, where they invented straight-in locking portafilters for increased ergonomics. They also have the built-in scales for accuracy of your extractions. In addition to that, they also have auto flush feature on the group heads, which increases your cleanliness and workflow. The KB90 is just one of many machines that fit your style and your needs in your coffee shop, no matter what kind of business you run. And La Marzocco wants you to get the right machine for your business. They're available to help you. Just email info@lamarzocousa.com. And then again, don't forget to check them out over at lamarzocousa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Espressly, creating custom branded mobile apps for your coffee bar so your customers can have this immersive experience of your culture, your branding, the feel of what they love about your coffee bar in the palm of their hand with the convenience of mobile ordering. Espressly is all about advocating for independent specialty coffee retailer like you, and their model for this is a no-risk model. There's no setup or development fees with Espressly. You get a drive-through payment scanner, receipt and label printing capabilities. The data is stored in the app, and it integrates with some of the best payment processing systems out there. Of course, that includes Square. So I really would encourage you to explore this if you've been wanting to add mobile ordering to your business or an app, or if you already have it, but you want to explore other options that bring that experience to your customers. I would encourage you to reach out to Espressly. Go visit their website and get signed up today over at espressly.co. That's espressly.co. All right, everybody. Well, today I wanted to talk to you about policies, and I wanted to sort of talk about one of the things that I find interesting when I talk to clients of mine about things that they're frustrated about in the coffee bar. A lot of times what they'll tell me about is related to staff. They'll say, we have these policies, we have these checklists and different procedures, and you think, they signed on to do this. They said, oh yeah, I read the manual, I agree, we're going to do this and that. And okay, so you're an employee of this business, and you assume that people who sign up to be employees of businesses would therefore, in all knowledge of the procedures and policies, uphold those things. That's simply, basic understanding. But that just doesn't happen, does it? You always have to chase people down to finish tasks, to remember to check the bathroom, to remember to, do this or that, or not do this or that. There's all sorts of things that you have to put fires out around that you wish you just didn't have to do. And so much of what I encounter is needless stress and out of control cultures where there's a lot of permissiveness around just kind of ignoring the fact that there are ways to do things that have been communicated, but really sort of calling the bluff on management and saying, what are you going to do about it? No one's actually saying that. Now, there's some people who do maybe have that kind of an attitude in the coffee bar, and some people are simply forgetful. But in a sort of subconscious way, we all do what we know we can get away with. Again, I say subconscious because I don't want to make it seem like there are people out there that are just explicitly bad actors that are in the coffee bar trying to not do things, trying to do the opposite of what you want them to do. But if you as the boss are not really moving people back to center and controlling the communication and curating the culture, then it's going to get away from you. And one of the things that I find tends to be missing when it comes to policies and people who are really upset because people are just not following the policies and they're constantly late or they're constantly this and that, is a lack of consequence. We're far, far too permissive with people simply ignoring directives. And the rest of the group of baristas looks at that and says, well, then if they're allowed to do it, I'm allowed to do it. And that just kind of leads to this snowball effect where now all of a sudden nobody is following the policies. And you just wonder why that is. All the while, we realize we don't actually have a disciplinary procedure. We don't have teeth to our policies. Nobody knows what's going to happen when you come in late lots and lots of times, mainly because there is no policy about what will happen if you're late lots and lots of times. If you completely ignore the certain items on the checklist chronically. Now, we're really talking about people who chronically forget or abuse the system or ignore different tasks, and their performance is, like I say, just constantly outside of the range of what is communicated as the ideal or even just the bare minimum. We don't have well thought through consequences that are communicated to people. And even oftentimes when we do, we, just like baristas who forget about the manual and it collects dust underneath the, espresso machine, owners do this as well. Managers do it as well because we hate confrontation. We don't want to actually have to go through the process of disciplining somebody. And so we just kind of give and give and give more benefit of the doubt, more exceptions, more permissiveness. And so what was supposed to be sort of a 4-step disciplinary process of people when there's a chronic problem of lateness or dropping the ball in a significant area in the policies, turns into 10 different incidents where out of the goodness of your heart, quote unquote, you've decided, I'll give them another chance. Yeah, it was really my fault. We're just making excuses for this person. All the while, there's 2 groups of people watching. There's one group that says, oh, well, if, again, they can do it, then I can do it. And there's another group of people that says, hey, wait a minute, I've read the manual, and I'm actually having to pull up the slack for these other people, and it's not fair. And I feel like I don't want to keep working in a place where I have all of the burden of responsibility on me, and I just want to do good work, but everyone else is allowed to just ignore it. It doesn't seem fair to me. And so really, if you're going to have policies in your coffee bar, you have to be dedicated to backing them up with consequence, because there's no sense in telling people what to do unless you give them a clear and reasonable consequence or steps of discipline as a response to that. I think that's just part of working in a professional environment. And when I say reasonable, what I really want to say here is kind of, we like this idea of people-first leadership, okay? Holding people accountable sometimes includes disciplinary processes. But even in a disciplinary process where somebody gets on probation, we can't just throw them into that status and let them try to sink or swim. Part of our job as leaders is going to have to be restoration and helping them succeed and really giving them as many opportunities as possible within that structure. And so if somebody says, okay, there's a 4-step process, first there's a verbal warning, then there is a written warning, and then there's probation, right, for 30 days or something. And then after that 30 days, if we have another meeting, it's possible termination. That's pretty standard kind of boilerplate disciplinary process, often applied first with tardiness or lateness in the coffee shop. But all throughout that process, what we need to keep in mind is that that process is there with multiple steps to serve that person. It's one thing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt sort of when we're shooting from the hip in relationships and we say, oh, I'll let them skate and I'll try to remind them. That's a very loose way of doing what a system of disciplinary action would actually do better. In that system now, you know where that person stands. They know where they stand. They know this. They know the severity of the situation, and you do as well. If you didn't want to lose that person, it does mean that you kind of believe in them And you want them to do well. You don't want them to do the things that they're doing, constantly showing up late, or not working during the closing shift and letting their coworker just do all the work and that kind of stuff. You want them to change. And unfortunately, we are in a position where we have to leverage our authority sometimes in order to make that happen. And this process is not a time for you to pull away and let them sink on purpose. It's actually a time to embrace that person more. It's actually a time for you to dig in a little bit and help them and coach them and resource them. And if in the face of all of those things, they persist in this, then you want to make it so they can't say, you didn't help me, you didn't give me a chance, and all this stuff, right? It's not only good for just that relationship, it's also good legally speaking. Make this a process where it's documented, et cetera. So the whole gist of this discussion here today, or this talk, is the idea that if you're going to tell people what to do and how to do it, which is kind of the role of leadership and building a business. A business is a place that has rules. It has things that people are supposed to do, and it creates how things function. There also has to be what happens when people don't do those things. You have to think that through. It's not fun, not at all, but it has to be done, or else you are going to be just at the mercy of your sort of natural avoidant behavior, avoiding confrontation, or maybe even handling confrontation terribly. Maybe you love confrontation and, the system is, and somebody just pisses you off, you fire them, I like people that say, you should hire slow and fire fast. Not always, right? And we've talked about this a tad on the show as well. I'm all for intentionality, mindfulness, processes, building in a people-first, humane approach, but also having some pretty firm boundaries in place. That's really what this boils down to, creating boundaries. We like personal boundaries. We're actually going to have an episode on boundaries coming up pretty soon. Returning guest Tom Henschel will be talking with us about setting boundaries in the workplace. And this is just one of those things. That's what policies do. And a disciplinary process or having teeth to the policy is absolutely necessary if you want a good culture where people are not only taking care of the work and the customer, but they're also taking care of each other. So let me know what you think. I mean, this is kind of a hard topic to talk about, and I would love to hear how you have handled these types of things. Maybe you're in that position where you realize we really don't have any kind of process in place. Our policies are pretty loose, and our consequences, they're not even there. Or maybe you are somebody who already has this structure in place. I would love to see from your perspective how this has generated positive results in the workplace, where maybe you've restored a staff member as they've gone through that process and helped them overcome a challenge. Or maybe you have actually seen somebody leave who, in the end, unfortunately needed to leave, and it was a relief to the staff because that person was really dragging people down and causing a lot of toxicity. It was kind of a bummer. They're a great person, but maybe they weren't the right fit for that particular job in that time in their life. So that's, I think, a humane way to look at things, and I'm interested in your thoughts. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Keys to the Shop. Don't forget to follow Keys to the Shop on Instagram at Keys to the Shop. And if you're interested in having one-on-one consultation related to helping you improve and optimize your coffee bar operations and management, leadership, and quality, you can just email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. Let's set up a call and talk about what that might look like. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break, from Keys to the Shop.